Step 2 in our BlockDog Photoshop project will be to create these green squares. I'll follow the similar example to what I did with the eyes. We'll move on to more complicated shapes like these ears, and then move on down to even more shapes like the cheeks and the muzzle and all these different pieces. So let's get started. Here's where we left off. I have 2 eyes, a nose, and a brow. The next step will be to create those green squares. I'll begin by creating a new layer. Grab my marquee tool by either clicking on the marquee tool on my toolbar or by pressing M on my keyboard. Hold down my Shift key to select. Select green from my foreground color and paint that with the paint bucket tool. Just like I did with the eyes. Let me rename this as square. I will create a copy of this layer by dragging it down to the new layer button. Now with my mover tool, I can slide that to the other side. Let's move on now to these ears. I'm going to call this right ear because it's the dog's right ear. You can see it's an L shape. I can think about making this in one of 2 ways. I can think about drawing 2 rectangles and combining them together, or I can think about a subtractive method where I make the entire rectangle and then cut out this piece. I think that will be easier. Let's start with the right ear. Make a new layer, name it right ear. Use my marquee tool to create a rectangle. This first one is a purple color. I'm going to stick with the purple color I used with the eyes. So in my color picker, if I drag out onto my work area, you'll see that I get an eyedropper. I'm going to click on that eye to grab that color of purple and then fill my rectangle in. Control D will deselect. Going back to the marquee tool, I want to select the part that I want to keep of this ear. So by selecting this piece over here that I will remove, it'll leave me with that sort of upside down L shape. So with that part selected, I'll press delete on my keyboard and then Control D. Because I need another ear just like this but reflected to the other side, I will begin by copying this ear. Let's name this left ear. Go up to my edit menu, transform, and choose flip vertical. Oopsie, Control Z. Let's go back, transform, flip horizontal. I have the mirror image of my right ear now as my left ear, but it's the wrong color. It needs to be this sort of cyan sky blue color. Let's grab my foreground color, choose a light blue, and then with my paint bucket I can fill that in. So I have my ear, these side pieces. The next piece for me to create is this sort of sideways S or Z. Again, we can think of this as 2 rectangles side by side or a big rectangle with squares taken out. I'm going to use an additive method for this to make sort of the 2 pieces side by side. And let's get started. Make a new layer. Start by selecting a rectangle. Choose my foreground color. It's going to be this yellow color. Fill that in with my paint bucket. Hit Control D. And you'll see that this is sort of like 2 rectangles side by side. I'll come right along next to this rectangle and make another one right next to it. And fill that with the paint bucket. Control D, see what it looks like. I could always add a little bit more in. I feel like it needs a little bit more all the way across it through this middle piece here. Let's go into here. There we go. I like that. Let's make a copy of that. Go to transform and flip horizontal. And this piece, I believe, is orange. That piece right there. Let's move my slider down just a tad, and we'll fill that in. And start assembling these pieces a little bit. The square sits below that piece. I'll have to select the layer, move these pieces into place. If I want to make the square a little bit smaller or this piece a little bit bigger, I just hit Control-T. And with my square, I can hold down my Shift key. Select that. So I'm getting closer. What's the next piece that we should do? Bring this up. I would like to do this sort of cheek shape here. To make that happen, I'm going to have a rectangle here. I'm going to rotate it 45 degrees and slice that off. Let's see what we can do. Go up to the top, make a new layer. We'll call this, let's call it R cheek. Select a rectangular area. This one's purple. Again, I can copy that color from here and fill this in. Now to make that cut, I'm going to rotate this. If I go to Edit, Transform, and Rotate, up at the top, I get a bunch of different settings in here. I'm going to change this angle to be 45. So let's take a look at that shape again. I'm going to make a 45-degree cut here using my rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to cut that piece off. Grabbing my marquee tool, I'll click and drag, come right down to that corner, and then press Delete. Control D. And I want to transform this piece again. Rotate it. Now I want that angle to be negative 45. It's going to set that back. Apply the transformation. Now I'm starting to have my cheek, so that comes into here. I need to start moving these pieces up just a tad. And I can make a copy of that. Go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Whoopsie, what did I do? Let's go back. Let's make a copy. I did think I just moved it. Let's move it back up. Let's make a copy. There we go. Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Let's move this guy over here, which is that light blue color. Move my color picker over so I can select that light blue. Now we're starting to get some of these major pieces of the block dog in play.